There are moments in life when Libra cannot explain what is happening through logic alone. Not because logic is missing, but because the heart has already moved far ahead of the mind. You might be sitting in a familiar afternoon, doing familiar things, living a rhythm that looks stable from the outside, yet deep within, something gently begins to stir. Not loud, not urgent, just a very soft sensation, as if someone quietly touched the door of your soul and then stood there, patiently waiting. This call does not arrive as chaos. It does not carry crisis or pressure. It comes quietly, with subtlety, in the exact way a Libra is able to feel it. It might be a casual invitation you overhear, an opportunity you once believed was not meant for you, an old thought returning after being set aside for a long time because you feared disturbing the balance you worked so hard to build. What is different now is that it no longer drains you. It no longer makes you want to run. Instead, it asks you to pause and listen. Libra is naturally skilled at keeping the peace, maintaining harmony in the world around them, often forgetting to listen to their own inner voice. You once told yourself you needed more time, better conditions, everything to be perfect before you could step forward. But this call does not ask for perfection. It asks for honesty. Honesty with a feeling that has walked beside you for a long time, one you kept postponing, one you were afraid to face. Have you noticed how familiar everything feels right now? Nothing here is foreign. These moments resemble a part of you that once lived very fully, very boldly in the past. But through responsibility, through the fear of disappointing others, through the desire to keep everything calm, you slowly learn to shrink yourself. Now, with maturity, with experience, with a deeper understanding of your own worth, this part of you returns, not to disturb your life, but to remind you of who you are. This call does not force you. It does not pull you forward. It simply stands there, patient, waiting for you to step out on your own, because true destiny never rushes. It understands that Libra needs to feel safe before choosing. That is why this signal arrives so gently, at exactly the right moment, when you have learned that balance does not mean staying still, but having the courage to move, without losing yourself. You may not see the entire road ahead yet, and that is completely normal. No one is required to have every answer from the beginning. What matters is that you heard the call, and hearing it is proof that you are far more ready than you realize, ready to trust your intuition, ready to step out of the role of always pleasing others, ready to begin honoring the quiet desires of your own heart. When Libra allows themselves to truly listen to this call, a strange stillness begins to spread. Not the stillness of avoidance, but the stillness of clarity. You begin to sense that some things in life no longer need to be weighed and measured, that some answers do not come from thinking, but from a deep inner knowing, where no explanation or justification is required. And when you remain in that moment long enough, when you stop running from the feeling, something very natural happens. Light begins to appear inside the very questions you once feared to face. Not a blinding light, but a gentle one, just bright enough to show you the next step. Not to force an immediate decision, but to let you understand, quietly, that you are no longer walking in the dark. There is a very gentle truth that Libra is beginning to recognize during this time. Not every delay is a failure. Not every pause means a lack of courage. Some things need to rest quietly for a while, to be held long enough in silence, so that when they finally awaken, you no longer tremble in fear of your own choices. And now, you find yourself standing before a feeling that is both familiar and entirely new. The things you once set aside, the things you promised yourself you would return to when the time was right, are softly knocking once again. This time, they do not arrive with pressure. They do not make your heart race with anxiety. They appear with an unusual calm, as if to say, you are no longer the person you once were. The decisions that once kept you awake at night have become simple questions, asking only for honesty. You begin to look back and understand that your hesitation back then was not weakness, but wisdom. You were not yet steady enough to stand inside those choices without losing yourself. Libra has always longed for balance, but there were moments when balance was mistaken for stillness. You once believed that keeping everything the same was the safest way to avoid hurting anyone, including yourself. But time has taught you a quiet lesson. True balance does not live in keeping things unchanged. It lives in whether you are being honest with your own emotions. That is why the things once delayed are returning now, in a different form. They no longer ask you to sacrifice yourself. They invite you to step in with awareness. You can feel this difference clearly in your body. Before, thinking about these choices felt heavy. Now, they feel bright. Not because the road has become easier, but because you have grown enough to stop making things harder for yourself. By clinging to old fears, you have passed through seasons where every decision had to be filtered through the expectations and opinions of others. And now, you are learning to listen to yourself without guilt. A clarity is forming. Slowly, but with great certainty, you begin to understand why everything had to wait until now. If it had arrived earlier, you might have chosen out of obligation. If it had come later, you might have missed it out of exhaustion. But this moment is just right. Just right for you to stop proving anything. Just right for you to stop chasing approval. Just right for you to move forward with self-respect and inner peace. What is awakening now is not meant to pull you back into the past. It comes to be seen through who you are today. A person who knows how to set boundaries. A person who understands that not every form of harmony is worth the cost of self-abandonment. You no longer seek agreement by making yourself smaller. You seek harmony by standing firmly in your own values. And in the moment Libra realizes this, a very gentle release occurs. You no longer resent missed chances. You no longer mourn the choices you were once afraid to make. Everything begins to make sense in a deeply human way. Every delay had its reason, and the greatest reason of all was to help you become strong enough, clear enough, and compassionate enough toward yourself to move forward without turning back in regret. As you allow this clarity to spread, you begin to walk more slowly, yet more steadily. There is no need to rush. No need to decide everything right now. Just remain in this moment, knowing that you are far more ready than you ever believed. There is a very subtle moment that happens when Libra begins to listen more closely to themselves than to the world around them. Not because you are becoming closed off, but because you realize the noise outside no longer guides you the way it once did. The advice that used to reassure you, the standards that once made you feel safe, suddenly begin to fade. In their place, a clear inner feeling starts to form, like a small light being lit in the deepest part of your soul, bright enough to show you what you truly need. Libra has always been a gifted listener, but you spent so many years listening to others that you forgot. Your intuition has a voice of its own. Now, that voice is no longer whispering. It does not argue. It does not need to prove anything. It simply appears. Steady, calm, as if it has waited long enough to finally be heard. You begin to realize there are things you have always known. You just never allowed yourself to trust them. The truth within you does not come to hurt you. It comes to free you from a long season of inner conflict. The questions that once left you uncertain are slowly taking shape. You understand why certain paths no longer bring you peace, even though you tried to walk them for a very long time. You also understand why some desires refuse to disappear, even when you repeatedly told yourself you should be satisfied with what you already have. This is not blind ambition. This is the call of honesty with yourself. Libra's intuition now becomes sharper in a very gentle way. It does not push you to act immediately. It simply places you face to face with the truth so that you can no longer turn away, as if you never saw it. And that truth is simple. You are no longer meant to live your life, making everyone else comfortable. True harmony cannot exist if you continuously betray your own emotions. Your soul is longing for a life that reflects who you have become. You may feel a trace of fear as this realization settles in. That is completely natural. Truth always requires courage. But alongside that fear, there is also a deep relief. As if you have been carrying an invisible weight for far too long, and now you are finally allowed to set it down. You no longer ask what you did wrong. You simply recognize that you have outgrown old patterns. When Libra allows this truth to exist, the world around you does not collapse the way you once feared it might. Life continues, but you are different. You stand within your own life, with a new posture, more grounded, more honest. You do not need to explain yourself endlessly. You do not need everyone to understand right away. What matters most is that you understand yourself. This inner truth does not demand that you change everything overnight. It gently invites you to live more consistently, one step at a time. To choose what makes you feel open instead of what makes you shrink. To speak what needs to be spoken, even if your voice still trembles. To leave places where you must pretend and move closer to spaces where you are allowed to be yourself. And when you remain with this feeling long enough, when you stop trying to soften it through distraction, something beautiful happens. You begin to experience a peace that does not come from everything being perfect, but from no longer living against your own truth. The light you see now does not come from the outside. It radiates from that honesty within you, quietly illuminating your next steps in a way that feels natural, human, and deeply real. When the truth within you has finally been named, something very natural begins to happen. No effort required, no force involved. What no longer fits starts to quietly step away from Libra's life. Like leaves that have completed their season, they do not resist when they fall. They let go in silence, leaving space for new light to enter. And you realize that an old cycle is coming to a close, not through pain, but through ripeness. Libra was once accustomed to holding on, not out of greed, but out of kindness. You feared that if you let go, someone might be hurt. You feared that if you changed, you would become selfish. You learned how to stay in situations that no longer nourished you, just to keep the surface of life looking harmonious. But now, you understand something deeply important. Harmony built on self-sacrifice will eventually collapse, and you no longer wish to continue living in that quiet exhaustion. This old cycle may take many forms. It could be a relationship you tried to sustain through patience alone. It could be a way of living that constantly required you to adjust yourself to fit the expectations of others. Or it could be an older version of yourself, the one who always questioned whether you were enough before daring to step forward. Whatever it is, you no longer feel the need to explain your departure. Letting go now no longer feels like loss. It feels like a deep release. You do not feel empty. Instead, you feel lighter. Lighter in your thoughts. Lighter in your breathing. Lighter in the way you inhabit yourself. You begin to understand that some things are only meant to walk with you for a certain distance, and their departure does not mean they were meaningless. They have fulfilled their role. Libra learns that endings do not always need drama. Not every closing requires a long goodbye. Some endings happen very quietly. On an ordinary morning, when you suddenly realize you no longer wish to keep trying. Not because you gave up, but because you finally understand what you deserve. And in that clarity, you no longer feel compelled to compromise yourself, to maintain a pleasing image in the eyes of others. Libra's courage now does not lie in confrontation, but in choosing honesty. Honesty with your emotions. Honesty with your limits. Honesty with the truth that you have grown, and what once was enough is no longer enough. You no longer fear that letting go will leave you alone, because you begin to feel a steady companionship from within yourself. As the old cycle closes, a new space opens quietly. There is no need to rush to fill it. You allow yourself to remain in that space, to breathe, to feel. This space is not emptiness. It is preparation. It is ground that has been cleared, ready for something new to grow, unobstructed by the remnants of the past. And in that moment, Libra experiences a very different kind of peace. Not the peace that comes from everything familiar remaining intact, but the peace of no longer living against yourself. The road ahead does not need to be fully visible yet. It is enough to know that you were brave enough to close what no longer belonged to you. And from that gentle closing, something new is quietly approaching, carrying a different rhythm, more honest, more tender, and far more aligned with who you are becoming. When the old space has been cleared through honesty and courage, Libra begins to feel a different rhythm touching their life. Not rushed, not loud. It arrives like a gracious invitation, one that feels deeply aligned with who you are. An invitation that does not ask you to change yourself, to fit in, but invites you to step forward as your true self. This is when you realize that a new balance does not need to be fought for. It only asks that you allow it. The opportunities appearing now carry a very different energy. There is no longer the feeling of having to overextend yourself to prove your worth. In work, you may notice offers that respect your time, your abilities, and your limits. In finances, the flow begins to feel clearer, steadier, more transparent. In relationships, you sense a true exchange where you no longer have to tense yourself just to keep things stable. Everything feels lighter, yet more solid. Libra begins to understand that true harmony does not come from pleasing everyone. It comes from living in alignment with your values and allowing what truly fits to find its way to you. You no longer feel the need to say yes while your heart is exhausted. You no longer fear that saying no will cost you something essential. Instead, each time you choose honesty, you feel as though you are protecting something deeply precious within yourself. There is a subtle shift in how you make decisions now. Before, you weighed too many external factors. Now, you listen to the signals of your own body. If a choice feels open, calm, and gives you room to breathe, you know it is the right direction. If something causes you to contract, to feel drained, before it even begins, you allow yourself to step back. Without explanation, this is not selfishness. This is self-respect. This new balance is not perfect, in the sense that everything flows effortlessly, but it is real. It allows you to have slow days, moments of hesitation, without making you doubt your worth. You learn to trust that you deserve what nourishes you, not only what feels familiar, and that belief begins to change how the world responds to you. Libra realizes that when you stop accepting what depletes you, you naturally open the door for healthier things to enter. There is no need to force it, no need to chase it. Relationships rooted in respect appear. Opportunities that reflect your true capacity begin to reveal themselves. You no longer ask why everything took so long, because now you understand that time never took anything away from you. It was simply arranging everything into its proper place. There is a deep calm that arrives when you begin living within this new balance. Not calm because everything is fully settled, but calm because you are no longer betraying yourself. You feel alignment between thought and action, between desire and choice, between what you give and what you allow yourself to keep. And within that alignment, you begin to walk differently, with the posture of someone who knows who they are and is no longer afraid of losing balance by choosing to live truthfully. When Libra remains with this feeling long enough, you realize that this new balance is not a destination. It is a way of living, a way of meeting life with gentleness and clarity, with compassion without self-abandonment. And within that rhythm, you begin to sense that what lies ahead is no longer something to fear, but something you are ready to receive with an open and steady heart. There is a very quiet moment when Libra realizes they are no longer standing at a confusing crossroads, not because every question has disappeared, but because you are no longer afraid to move forward without having all the answers. This destined call no longer arrives as a test or a source of pressure. It comes as a gentle confirmation that you have lived enough, grown enough, and learned to love yourself enough to trust the path in front of you. Libra understands that answering the call does not have to be a dramatic act. Sometimes it is simply a quiet agreement with yourself, a silent yes, a nod that happens within, a decision that no longer requires permission from anyone else. You stop asking whether you are doing the right thing. You simply feel that you are doing what is aligned, and that feeling brings a deep sense of peace, a peace that does not come from external certainty, but from inner harmony. When you choose to answer, the road ahead does not suddenly become perfect, but it becomes real. You walk with a slower rhythm, yet with greater steadiness, no longer rushing toward an outcome, no longer comparing your journey to anyone else's. You understand that this path carries your unique signature, shaped by everything you have lived through, everything you have released, and everything you have learned to value. There is a very gentle courage within this choice, not the courage to confront, but the courage to trust that you do not need to sacrifice your peace in exchange for validation, to trust that you deserve what comes from respect and sincerity, to trust that living in truth does not take anything away from you, but returns to you what was once forgotten. Libra begins to notice that each step now feels lighter, not because every burden has disappeared, but because you are no longer carrying fears that do not belong to the present. You are no longer pulled backward by old stories You no longer feel the need to explain why you chose differently. Answering this call allows you to stand firmly in your own life with a quiet sense of self-possession. And within that stillness, a new kind of faith begins to grow. Faith that, even if the road ahead changes shape, you have the ability to adapt without losing yourself. Faith that you can be gentle and clear, loving and boundaried, open to the world, yet loyal to your own truth. When Libra stays with this decision, something beautiful unfolds. Life begins to respond differently, not loudly, not dramatically, but accurately. More fitting opportunities appear. Relationships that feel safer draw closer. And even on imperfect days, you still sense that you are moving in the right direction. The feeling of being lost within your own life quietly fades. And this is where the story settles. Not to end, but to let you fully feel this moment. The moment you realize you heard the call, you understood it, and you chose to answer in the most honest way you could. There is no need to rush, no need to prove anything, only to continue walking forward with trust, with courage, and with gentleness toward yourself. If anything remains after all of this, it is a very soft reminder. For Libra, you did not come here to live a life that pleases everyone. You came here to live a life balanced between the heart and the truth. And when you allow yourself to do that, the road ahead is no longer a question mark. It becomes a journey. You can walk one step at a time with the quiet peace of knowing you are exactly where you are meant to be.